going to be chatting about post-purchase marketing opportunities. Before I jump in, I just wanted to give a little bit more background about myself and Labyrinth Digital. So Labyrinth Digital, we're a growth marketing agency. We specialize in helping brands sell their products on their own website store. We have been around since 2017 and we're based in Denver, Colorado. Our core services fall in marketing strategy consulting. So thinking through, you're at a certain place and you have a big goal. What's the most effective way to get there? The second area we do a lot of work in is around reporting and analytics. So that can start with thinking about what should I be measuring to make sure I get to my goal, pulling all that information into dashboards, or just doing custom analysis to look into your data to find key opportunities. And then the last area where we support our clients is on channel management. We do a lot of work with email, SMS, paid advertising, including your Meta, your Google, as well as direct mail when it makes sense. All right, so kind of switching gears and thinking about post-purchase marketing. So before I get into some of the strategies and tactics, I wanted to just frame why this is so important for businesses. So a few stats here. It's 5 times cheaper to keep a customer than to get a new one. Selling to an existing customer has a success rate between 60 and 70%, whereas selling to a new prospect is only between 5 and 20. And then according to Gartner research, 80% of a company's future revenue will come from just 20% of its existing customers. So kind of the bottom line here is retention marketing is a huge revenue generating for your business, as well as it's an opportunity to increase your profitability. So I'm going to talk about 3 different strategies and tactical areas that help bolster retention marketing. So I'll start with talking through email and SMS opportunities. Then I'm going to touch on just opportunities by looking into your own data. And then finally, I'll finish with just talking through different post-purchase program opportunities. All right, so first in the email and SMS realm, I just want to level set with some basic kind of baseline. So within email marketing, we see there's 3 different types of campaigns. One is your newsletters. So for example, think through your product launches, your sales, your customer highlight stories. That all falls in that category of newsletter. The second area of email communications is what we call lifecycle campaigns. Brands that use Klaviyo often call them flows. Some people say automations. But basically, these are the communications that align to the action that matches what a customer's behavior is. So for example, when someone subscribes to your email, they often get a welcome, and that's aligned to behavior. Or when they purchase, there's a post-purchase communication. And then the third area is those transactional emails. So those are things like your shipping, confirmation, your receipt, things like that. So in the realm of thinking through post-purchase, wanted to talk a little bit about automations. We see with brands that design these communications well, up to 80% of your email and SMS program revenue comes from these automations. So what we have here is the arc of a subscriber lifecycle. So in the beginning, it's matching those automations that with the goal of driving that first purchase. So a lot of times when someone joins your list, there's a welcome series. Sometimes if they've welcomed but they haven't taken any action, you'll see things like early activation. Maybe there's an offer of trying to get them to take that first action of purchase. In that next bucket is once they've browsed your products but haven't quite taken that action, you'll often see a browse abandonment. And then I'm sure we're all familiar with is when someone adds that product to the cart, but they haven't yet bought, you'll often see those abandoned cart communications. And all of those communications are designed to get your subscriber to take that first action, which in the e-commerce space tends to be purchase. Then in that kind of blue bucket, it's once they've made that purchase, how do you strengthen that relationship with your brand? So automations that tend to be in place in this time are post-purchase communication. So, hey, you just got this product. How do you use it? How do you set it up? Maybe some care type of information. Those are common content that falls in that bucket. There's also the opportunity to do cross sell. So they bought something. What is the most likely next thing that they should buy? And then there's also those communications just around surprise and delight of, hey, because you're a customer, you get this type of perk. Or things like maybe they've hit a milestone of they've had your product for a year. Or maybe Spotify does this type really well. At the end of the year, they tell you your like history of like how you have engaged with Spotify over that year. So those are all examples of how do you strengthen that relationship and get more value once someone has become a customer. And then what's in red is just general health of your email and SMS program of once you see people that aren't taking the action that you want of maybe a second purchase or engaging with your brand, what do you do to win them back, to get them engaged again? Or when do you just let them go because they're no longer opening and clicking campaigns, and they're going to just drive the health of your email program down? So having some types of automation in place for that is really important. And then just around that email and SMS, thinking post-purchase, just wanted to bring some samples to light. So on the right, the example here is Fatty's. So once someone had purchased one meat stick, we designed an automation that was in place to ask them, have they tried all the flavors that the brand has? Because they're likely interested. They enjoyed their first purchase. Let's get them deeper, more involved in the brand and just show them other flavors that they could also try. And then further on the right, another touch is from a brand that sells Western boots that are fairly high average order value, over $400. There's communications that were designed to, how do you take care of these boots? Of you made an investment in this product. What are some tips to keep them looking the best that they can? So these are some examples of communications that work really well for somebody that's already made a purchase with your brand. All right, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and just touch on the importance of data and analytics when you're thinking about retention marketing. So a lot of times the answer of what your communication strategy should be once someone makes a purchase, the data gives you a lot of clues. So for example, if you were that meat sticks brand, you may want to look into that data to see when is it likely that someone will make their next purchase. So maybe it's every 30 days or every 60 days. And that would influence when you want to start talking to them to incentivize them to buy again. For other brands, it could be with like a larger catalog of if somebody buys one thing first, looking into the data to see what they're going to buy, most likely to buy next. And then you can put in those communication products that they're most likely to buy. And that's going to increase the probability that they're going to buy again from you. Some common analysis that brands use to uncover these. One is what we call market basket analysis. That's looking at the frequency of what people tend to buy together. And then purchase frequency is exactly how it sounds. What does somebody buy? What's the timeline that someone will buy again from you? And then ultimately, you're using that as predictive analytics to model if somebody comes in, what's the likelihood that they're going to buy next? And how do you communicate that across the board? All right. So I'm just going to touch on some common post-purchase programs that help put systems in place to generate repeat purchases for brands. So one common one is subscribe and save. So basically these programs are a slight discount for enrolling in a program where you're going to continue to get the product over and over again. These are really good for products that people tend to purchase fairly frequently. So think maybe supplements, snacks, things like that. It's really good for the business side because there's predictable revenue that you can forecast how much revenue you're likely to have from the subscribe and save base. And it's also good for the business because there's less marketing that needs to happen to keep these people engaged with your brand. And then ways you can promote them is just one is on your product page of giving them the option to save a little bit by enrolling in the subscribe and save program. A lot of times brands will carry this through into their checkout of, hey, did you know you can save if you enroll and subscribe and save? And then if neither of these prompted the customer to take that action, you can put in some communications that let them know if they come back to purchase again. They could be in a subscribe and save program, and there's opportunity to further save when they're in those programs. A second program that's really popular in post-purchase or for brands to use to incentivize. This one's a little bit more that touches on referral, but it's useful for post-purchase as well, is just those referral programs. 90% of people trust recommendation from their friends over ads, and friends influence over 81% of purchases online. So where we've seen a lot of success with these programs is once someone makes a purchase and you have a large catalog, you can have communications that say, hey, did you know if you tell a friend your next purchase, you get either a discount or a certain amount off, and they get something too. Why this is good is it's just another thing to keep people engaged and keep your brand fresh for the customer. And it often brings in net new customers at a more affordable price than, say, paid acquisition, just because people trust their friends, and the discount you're usually offering tends to be less than what you pay for a customer. And then the final post-purchase program I wanted to mention is loyalty program. So these can be great of just keeping that customer engaged and just offering more ways to engage with the program. So there's often with loyalty programs, monetary incentives of, hey, once you spend so much, you get deeper discounts or you always get free shipping. But there's also the opportunity to pull in more other types of benefits of, hey, you're the first to get new products. Hey, you get these type of VIP experiences because you're in it. And this is just another way to keep people coming back and buying again.